Greetings and salutations, travelers. Welcome back to the Inn of Planar Crossroads. And as always, welcome back to our Around the Hearth discussions. This time, we are discussing, where does magic come from? I almost titled it Daddy, Where Does Magic Come From? But I restrained myself because that'd be hard to fit on the thumbnail. So, it's just, where does magic come from? You can put that other part in there if you want. I'm not doing comments yet. No, I can't do that yet. That's too early for you guys to get the comment of the video. You gotta put it in there somewhere where you have to watch for it. So, let's go ahead and get into our introductions and announcements. I'll go first like I usually do to give them time to think about what they want to say. I'm Adam L. Spain. I'm Adam Lee Spain with the Inn of Planar Crossroads and the Gentle Voice TV, both one of which you are watching right now, and the other is a ministry channel on YouTube and Rumble. So you can find either one of these channels there. If you want to know more about the Inn of Planar Crossroads, or just if you want to know more about connecting with us, I should say, you can head on over to our landing page, theiopc.com or innofplanarcrossroads.com. Either one of those work. If you want to reach out on any of those social medias, you can do that for sure. If you want to check out that ministry channel, like I said, it's on Rumble or YouTube, The Gentle Voice TV. I had to put the TV on the end because the @ symbol, The Gentle Voice, was already taken on YouTube as far as a tag. I don't know by whom, but it was. So, there you go. That's why I had to do the TV part. But that's not got anything to do with what we're talking about tonight. So, let's do... let's just take turns, Skrat. So it's your turn to go before Dan.
I protest. This is an outrage.
We will roll for final thoughts, but we're just taking turns on this.
Okay. Yes, I'm Skrat from A Squirrel Plays over on YouTube, and only YouTube as we have discovered, where I make videos talking about some mechanics of storytelling, such as creating characters and world building stuff, but I also talk about the mechanics of TTRPGs as well. That's usually more of what I do, and that involves both storytelling and actual gameplay mechanics as I go off and explore and discover new TTRPG, well, new to me, TTRPGs, and hopefully help others, such as you, find new ideas and inspiration, like the Squirrel Death Squad video. I haven't got any reports on Squirrel Death Squads from other people's games, but one day I'll get an email.
There you go.
Life will be swell. That's all I got.
We'll just have to do that sometime up there when I'm with Dan or something. We'll just do a Squirrel Death Squad or something. I don't know.
Yes. Technically, it did happen in Bomb Squad, but they killed a bunch of goblins.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Quinn summoned an army of squirrels.
With top hats.
With top hats, that's right. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And one of them had a monocle.
That's true. They did a magical monocle.
He hasn't found that squirrel yet, I don't think.
No, they haven't taken the time to look. It did get away, though. The one that survived. Anyways, that's me, Dan from Avenue Studios. Check us out, avenuestudios.media, for all the links. We are on YouTube, Rumble, and anywhere you listen to podcasts, doing actual plays, starting to get more into some reviews. We will have some reviews coming up from... As of recording this, we have just gotten back from Page, Philly Area Gaming Expo, and we met a couple really cool vendors there, gave us some products to review, and we'll probably try to live stream them, some card games and board games. And then we also got to meet some really cool people, Stephen Glicker from Roll for Combat, Frank Metzner, and Professor Dungeon Master. It was really great. So they'll be going again next year in January, so I love giving them a shout out. If you're in the Philly area or can travel there in January, I would love to see you there next year. I'll be running games there and maybe be on some panels, so hope to see you there. And of course, you can support us on Locals or Patreon if you want to join the ever-growing force and join our West March Kingmaker campaign that we are running in Pathfinder 2nd Edition through Foundry Virtual Tabletop. So that's what we're doing. Got some new shows coming out March-ish, a little more on the entertainment side. hopefully you enjoy it. Still very much RPG fantasy. So that's us.
All right. And that means we're done with our introductions. It means we now need to get into our shout-out, called Levi's Shout-Out. It is for Old Grognard Says this time, per Skrat's suggestion. So you can check him out. He is currently, as of recording, at 1,170 subscribers. So we're going to try and get him up to 1,200, but I am okay if you want to push him to 2,000 to surpass Skrat. So you say,
Don't you do it.
I'm doing it. But check him out. The information he's got in there, pretty neat to check it out. He's got a lot of different things in there. AD&D stuff, D6 Star Wars stuff, things like that. So Gamma World, I'm seeing, and things along that line. So he just did a channel update, and he apparently has a regular upload schedule, which is something we do look for. If you actually have people that you want shouted out that have, check out our subscriber count. They have to be below or right around us to be able to qualify for shout out. Because if you're bigger than us, you don't really need a shout out from us. That doesn't make sense. So we want to shout out smaller creators to get that up. So that's the plan. Check out Old Grognard Says. Tell him the End of Planar Crossroads sent you, per A Squirrel Plays statement about needing to be shouted out. So there you go. That means our shout out's done. Our announcements are done. It's time to start the timer. Yeah. I'm liking this timer. It is working well. And it means that once the timer starts, it's time to grab your preferred beverage, pull up a chair around the hearth, and try to stay warm on these cold February nights as we discuss. Daddy, where does magic come from? I put it in there anyway. Skull.
Skull.
Alright, whoa, that squirrel's discovering where some magic comes from. That's not a nut. Don't eat it. I can just, that squirrel...
It's elevated now.
That squirrel's literally thinking in its head. I can see it in its eyes, and it's thinking, but I wanna.
It does look like it's looking at you and saying that, doesn't it?
But I want to eat it. Alright. Let's do our key points and considerations so that we can get into this chat. So for this, I don't have specifically a lot of media recommendations because we've covered some of those in the previous chats for both hard magic systems, soft magic systems, and just in general, when you see a lot of magic in games, you can check that out and kind of get an idea. But for this, there's usually, when you look at TTRPGs, and in a lot of media, including print and video, they have one of three things that they're doing with their magic. They're either doing divine, arcane, or both. And so this comes from an understanding of tabletop games like Pathfinder and so on. They usually define their magic as either arcane casting, divine casting, and that means they have a both setting. And this is going to be something that does really affect your setting. So you're going to have to think about this as a thing that will affect the way people think and play through your setting. So that's one point. It's very important for long-term planning in a long-setting play. So if you're doing a one-shot, you don't necessarily have to think about the inner mechanics and planes and stuff like that of what setting you're playing in, because unless you're going there, they have nothing to do with what you're talking about that time. So it's not really that important for one-shots. It's really a good thing to think about if you're planning to play in this setting for a longer period of time, knowing the separations in your magic. So remember that. And one of the pros about having separate magic systems and separate magic sources is that you can have a dichotomy of evil and good more easily presented to people through that anachronism. So you can use that if you want to and have that there. So those are some things that I've got down, but this one's a bit more open because we do not have a specific recommendation for yes or no on either one. At least I don't. It just depends on what you're wanting to do for your setting. So I'm going to open us into general chat then.
It's again that where to start. I trust Skrat's notes.
I wanted y'all's opinion on this.
Okay.
The Fallout universe.
Mm-hmm.
Radiation.
Yeah.
Magic. Magic. I'm telling you.
Yeah. I get what you're saying with that one. Yeah, technically I think it's like psionics, which you can say that's a different form of magic that you can add to the divine, arcane, or both trifecta. I don't really, because it's basically arcane. It's psychic arcane, but it's basically arcane. It's treated the same way. It has the same requirements. Mm-hmm. So you can be a stickler and say it doesn't have the same thing with components. Well, guess what? Most of your 5e games, people don't play with components anyway. So what makes them any different than a psychic?
It's a fair point.
But for the Fallout universe, yeah, they kind of had some fun with that one. Some things got to slide in the apocalypse. Definitions of specific things and what magic is and isn't, I don't think is a high priority in the apocalypse. But I'm willing to be convinced otherwise. But
I feel like if you just replace the radiation concept with some other thing like blood of the gods or some magic stone you can't get too close to or whatever, it would fit just fine because the stuff radiation does in that game is so far out there, and I love it. Yeah. I'm not even a big post-apocalyptic nut or anything, but man, I love the Fallout universe.
It does have a good universe to play in. It's one of those things where I like a lot of the lore behind Skyrim, but Skyrim doesn't play as good as like the Fallout games to me. Mm-hmm. I guess to go back to our other chat, Skyrim's really free and open with what you can do. And Fallout, you've got a little bit more restrictions because you're working with... everything's kind of based around ammo. So you do have that component portion to think about, trying to keep us inside our magic chat. But yes, and I actually think I've seen some show or game go with the idea of magical radiation being a thing that does affect things like you're talking about. But I'm trying to remember what it was.
I know that we played Shattered, Grim Dark RPG. That kind of has a magic, because it's a world-ending thing that causes magic to be around. But I think there are a couple that do that.
I suppose you could kind of set Dark Sun in that kind of a thing, because it's all life magic there. It's all essence. It's all based around the concept of using life energy to fuel your magic. It's all soul magic, I guess you would say, or spirit magic. I guess you'd say it's divine. I don't know. I don't know about that cosmology to specifically say.
Well, and I'll throw out as a general concept, because we're talking fantasy for February, Fantastical February, magic does become pretty important in deciding it. You don't necessarily have to put a lot into it. into thinking about it, but it does get kind of... It's a pretty core aspect, because just like we're talking about now, it's these different magic systems, even when they're not magic. Throw the Force in there, radiation. Sci-fi, generally, science is magic. Relatively.
Usually.
You know, it falls into that same category of... But it does really define a heavy aspect of the storytelling. Whether it's seeding or... Because once you put the magic in there, it affects everything. We've joked about it with prestidigitation, that spell would change the world if you could just clean your clothes whenever you want. Like, depending on how hardcore you want to get into it, where the magic comes from and how that works, it's going to affect all the stuff we talked about for the past 2 episodes too. Whether it's hard or soft magic, that's going to decide where the magic comes from. Is it ley lines? Is it components? Is it worship to a deity? How does that work? This is all, again, you can go as deep as you want. You don't necessarily have to go too deep, but it does need to be kind of, you do have to make that decision on how it works. Of course, there are a lot of systems that already do it for you.
Mm-hmm.
I was going to throw out too, see what you guys think about. I find, and maybe it's more in the open systems, that I find a struggle with having the multiple different ways you can do magic. It can get a little messy. Bomb Squad, for example, like Pim Pam character does not, for a while, did not have a deity that character was connected with. However, technically, rules is written, she's as powerful as anyone else. So... Zex brought that into the story about Pim Pam not being connected to the deity, but there's a little offset there. It's a little off sometimes if you think about it, because technically Pim Pam's been able to do all kinds of magical stuff. Because it's an open system. We were definitely looking. The whole intention was to test the system a little bit and see how far we could stretch it. So it's a little hard at a meta level to be like, well, I get what the character's saying, but at meta level, you're just as powerful as everybody. They're not more powerful than you, mechanically speaking. So there can be that disconnect. I think we're navigating it well, but it's something I've thought about. Because with an open system, I've allowed people to be creative and just come up with creative reasons how they use these abilities. But harkening back to the last talk, if you don't have that self-limitation, it can kind of go haywire, especially if you're allowing every type of magic. Technology included, because like I have steampunk tech in Bomb Squad 2.
Technically, it's Aetherpunk.
That's true. That is true, quite literally. But mechanically speaking, it's all the same. It's all the same power level because we're just rolling the attributes in the system. So it's just flavor that distinguishes them.
Well, and this is I bring this up because it's a way you can handle it. A way you handle hers being Pim Pam's, is that technically all gnomes are connected to Grandfather, their deity. So there is that connection there, despite not being officially connected as an Abaddon and representative. So that's kind of a workaround that you can have there. And that the amount of that connection may have grown organically just from the storytelling or what. I don't know that far behind the scenes. But it is one of those situations where if you are in a not fully fleshed out setting yet, your players help you build out that setting. And so that's beneficial for a soft thing. But something, and maybe you guys can clarify this for me too, because it does play into the idea of, well, where does magic come from? You can start out something with soft rules, but eventually those rules become hard. At least that's what I'm seeing, because using Open Legend, like using the Open Legend example, as you continue to make rulings and roll as a GM, those rulings then carry forward. And so you naturally, no matter how rules light your system is, it will become crunchier over time because your players are playing in it. They're doing things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a fair point. I could certainly see people continually trying to stretch it. But if you're really committed to the story and you're in it and you're building it together, there is going to be a natural progression there. I wonder if it's Skrat for the Easy D6, like you were talking about that one guy who has
all the plants and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a self-limitation he's creating.
No, actually, that was one of the schools. It was
that's right.
It's school. Just nature-y plant-based, but like that was the end of the description. Like he could do whatever he wanted with that. So,
and has he done whatever he wants, or
man, mostly it's weird. Him and somebody else tried. He's done the plant thing a couple times, and somebody else did a different school of magic. 99% of the time, they end up trying to grapple the enemy.
Oh.
I'm like, that's like, it's not the least effective thing you could do, but it's pretty darn close. It's like they just want to hold them still.
You guys say, Bulbasaur, use Razor Leaf.
Yeah. Really.
That's too bad. I like a good grapple build.
I mean, it works. It's just like, man, you had unlimited things you could do there, whatever you wanted, and you're just gonna grab them. Okay.
They're not thinking big enough. See, you grab them first, but then you rip them apart after that. That's the next step.
Yeah, no,
Come
just
on.
grab them and like try and squish them, but I don't know. It works. I know there was another game he tried to make. I think the way it went, there's like a big lava pit. And he was at first he tried to make a bridge, just vines go across, and I was like, okay, it's too close to the lava, too hot, it scorched it. And he's like, okay, well, he threw some seeds up into the ceiling, and a big vine came down. I was like, all right, we're going to swing across it, so do things like that.
That's fun.
Yeah. Nobody fell in the lava. It was disappointing.
Well, I mean, if we were to run lava like it actually is in the real world, ain't nobody going nowhere near a volcano without a hot suit, so...
That's true.
I did actually make that a thing for the Attar. Fire lava works like lava-ish, so unless you have immunity or resistance, you can't be around it. Because you would take consistent damage. So, I did have the players actually think about that. World building.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's thinking about where does magic come from, too. It does determine, as you start to decide that, in conjunction with deciding how hard or soft you're going to go with your magic, that's something you got. Again, I'm assuming you're world building yourself. Obviously, there's the pre-made settings that you can enter into. As always, they're just more like guidelines than actual rules. But that's my opinion.
His correct opinion, but his opinion nonetheless.
But for thinking about that, it does determine it. If you're going to have the divine, what does it require? And how staunch are you going to be to that? Are you going to use something like the alignment systems, or is there prayers, rituals? Is there some kind of scriptures they need? It definitely, there's a lot of, when you decide where your magic comes from, it creates a lot of other questions that does naturally build the world, so it can be a fun place to start a lot of times if you're doing homebrew setting. Mm-hmm. It can really determine a lot of how the game's going to play. If you haven't picked your system yet, it might be able to help you decide which system you can play in, or vice versa. If you picked your system, then you're starting to build a structure around it already.
Well, I think with a system and a setting merging together, which is what you always end up doing when you play a game, you end up merging the two at some point. Like D&D, you can't play D&D unless you strip out every single thing that's associated with its cosmology, its realms, its deities, its theming, and then reflavor it as something else. You can't get away from dealing with where does magic come from? Because if it has magic in it, it's a high magic setting. And if you're, like one example, if you're going to have a god of magic that dishes out power based upon service, then your wizards are just divine casters by another name. Everything's divine magic. And this is technically true in some versions of the D&D cosmology. Depending on whether you're in Greyhawk or the Forgotten Realm setting. In the Forgotten Realm setting, it is definitely, technically all magic could be considered divine. Because there's the Weave, which is controlled by a goddess, Mistra,
Right.
who is the goddess of magic, and she has an effect on how magic flows, and she's responsible for the health of the Weave. And if you assault the Weave, you assault the way magic works in that entire universe, not just in that area, but in the entire of that setting. So something like that is a heavy influence on your world. It's a big picture thing, but it's a heavy influence on your universe. And something like Pathfinder, which I have more experience with in its stuff, it's a little different in the sense that you have documented deities ascending into deific status, in which case you have all magic being, I would say, divine still, but you could say all magic technically arcane if you look at it in a way where it's like, oh, this if you can ascend through magic, then this magic isn't any different than divine, and then you just get into which came first, the chicken or the egg type of situation. So, and it'd probably still all be divine, but that's just, it depends on which creation myth in the Pathfinder universe you go with. Because the dragons say one thing, and I think the dwarves say, I don't think the dwarves try to contradict the dragons necessarily,
Right.
but there's differences there. So you have situations like that. And those can arise from how you're telling your story. What are you thinking about in your story? Where's the origins of your universe? Was it created by a deity? Or did that deity come from another place, like another universe that was created? Was it a banished deity? You could do a dark universe. We've talked about that briefly in other things. I think when we talked about, we also did an interesting thought experiment in our chat about atheistic deity design. Atheistic, or what was it? Killing God. The idea of a dying god. That's what it was. Where, yes, a deity made the universe, but the deity that made the universe wore down by making the universe, which means it's not an all-powerful deity, which means there's something above it that made it, which means you now have something interesting to play with in your setting again. So there's a whole bunch of things, theological, like real-world theological concepts that start to come into it. So it's really pretty. It's a deep subject to think about if you really start to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we can't do that right now. We need to get to final thoughts.
Yeah.
So, I told Skrat we would roll. So, do either of you have your dice right with you?
I have digital dice.
No, I don't do digital
I
dice.
knew it.
I real dice.
Oh, shit.
Alright. Let's roll to see who goes first. Oh no, it's me. So clockwise from me. So Avenue's up to bat, on deck, and then Skrat after that. So my final thought, I kind of used a lot of it this last issuing of ideas out of my face hole. But when you're dealing with your where does magic come from, we talked about a lot of detailed, like getting into a lot of detail of where it comes from. You only have to do that if you intend to make this setting something you return to on a regular basis. And do take a little bit of understanding from Dan with Bomb Squad or something like that when we mentioned that it was something that was built out along with the players. That is an option. But you are eventually going to come to a point where no matter how soft you're playing, hard things are going to come up. If you're playing dramatically, if you're really engaging in the drama, if the story is meaningful to the characters, then it's going to be somewhat meaningful to the players. They're going to be invested in it, which means they're going to want to have a satisfying resolution, which means satisfying resolutions mean hard things have to happen. Otherwise, it's not particularly satisfying because nothing changes. So think about that. And think about the story that you're telling and the game that you're playing. Even if it's a sum shot where you're just playing around. And the scale that you're taking it at. Those are all things to consider. So don't bite off more than you necessarily need to. Take your time, have some fun with it, and enjoy it. Because if it ceases to be enjoyable, then you're not playing anymore, you're working. So that's my thing.
Nice. Might have stolen mine. Yeah. That is exactly... I'll try to piggyback off of that a little. It's, yeah, you can do as much or as little as you want building it. I have enjoyed building it with the players. There's flexibility there when it comes to deities because... like Adam was mentioning with the Pathfinder, they have different opinions and different stories, and you don't necessarily have to know. Sometimes it can be fun to know, but never give straight answers to the players. Depends what you're doing. But I think with that, it very much can see, like I said at the beginning, I'll kind of bring it full circle that, especially for fantasy, deciding how the magic works is a pretty core component to the story. Again, not necessarily having to go hardcore detailed into it, but it does require some thought to put into that. Whether that's building it at Session Zero with your players or you're building a homebrew setting you're going to show to them, or studying a setting that already exists, that's already been made. It's a good thing to have a grasp on for fantasy. It's even in a low magic setting, I think it's pretty good to know where it comes from, because especially in the low magic setting, usually if there's magic, it's probably rare and powerful, so it's really fun to know where that comes from. It gives you a lot of story options. Knowing where the magic comes from gives you so many options to go with the story. Kind of harkening back to what Skrat was talking about with the enjoying watching characters interact with the hard magic system. There's so much story there, so many story possibilities, so much to work with when you start really thinking about it. So really do spend some time, whether as a whole table or yourself building, spend some time on it and have fun with it, because it's gonna a lot of fertile soil will be built from that.
All right. What you got, Skrat?
Well, let's see. For where does magic come from? You know, I said I like hard magic systems, and from a storytelling perspective, like he just said, but I'm actually fine when it comes to the source of the magic being pretty vague. Like, that doesn't bother me. You know, the Force, it was always there. Or even vibranium, it's just this magic space rock came down, crashed. Like, I'm fine with that. That doesn't bother me. It's, you know, everything they do with it after that bothers me. But I find that to be fine. I'm sure everybody's going to have a different opinion, but I don't feel like that part has to make too much sense, as long as everything following it does. You know, so for the Force, it was always there. Fine. but make it make sense from that point forward. Be consistent. I guess you could say, technically it doesn't even have to make sense as long as it's consistent. You know,
Consistent chaos.
Yeah, I don't know how they reach out with their hand and make things float, but as long as the same weight of stuff is floating each time they do it, you know, you don't have this, one person can pull a Star Destroyer out of the sky and one person can barely lift a pebble. Like, all right, what's going on here? So, make it make sense. And also, have either of you, I may have brought it up before, the Electrum Archive? Any of you played that?
I've not played it, but I remember hearing about some of it.
Yeah, so I didn't run it. A buddy of mine did. We just did a little one shot. And the magic in that one, I think that's what they call the Electrum. That's where I could be wrong though. But there's these drops. Everybody tries to get little liquid drops of something. We'll say it's the Electrum. I'm pretty sure that's what it is. But that's what everybody wants. That is both your currency and how you use all your magical abilities. So the more of that you have, technically the stronger you are. But I didn't play a caster, so I didn't have to deal with it. Except for, try and find it for money's sake. But we did have a caster with us, and it seemed kind of like Easy D6 in the sense you could determine how potent you wanted your spell to be. The more potent you made it, the higher chance of failure, that kind of thing. But that would eat up more that Electrum drops. Mm-hmm. So I thought that's where everybody's magic came from, was from that. Mm-hmm. But I don't remember the source of Electrum, where it came from. But see, that's kind of what I'm saying. Like, I don't really care where it came from. It's just, hey, it's there. This is how it works.
Right.
That's pretty fun. I really like that game. I want to play it some more.
Yeah, that's pretty cool that a society's created its currency based off of the magic.
Like that. Like I said, it was just the one shot, but I got the vibe the entire world revolved around that stuff. It's like everybody wanted it. Yep.
I think that's why I remembered you talking about it, because I've seen that done in video games for a few things.
Sure.
Other than Electrum. But I hadn't seen it done with RPGs as much. It does present interesting things to think about, because you're still thinking about where did the magic come from. Well, it comes from Electrum. You don't have to know where Electrum comes from, but you do have to know that it's limited and that it's not an unlimited supply. If there's an unlimited supply of Electrum, well, what's the point of a conflict then? So,
if I remember right, the guy used it in our party. We were jumping off the edge of not a super tall cliff, but it was taller than it needed to be, and he made a giant fart cloud, and he made it dense enough we could land it.
And density, okay.
Yeah.
Cushion.
Yep.
I
don't think that's how non-gaseous farts work.
Winnie the Pooh bounced on clouds before Adam, so...
in his dreams, maybe. I don't remember him doing that. Was he on some kind of honey high when that happened or something?
Not to get too hardcore into Winnie the Pooh lore, but it's from the New Adventures of Winnie the Pooh.
The crappy stuff. Okay.
Yeah. I love it. Pooh Bear, Winnie the Pooh Bear. Okay, anyway. Interesting, though. I think we've all kind of said generally the same thing, too. It's not how deep in. Like, just saying that Electrum, I'm, like, thinking it's starting to get my world-building head going. It's like, okay, economy is entirely based on a magic resource. How important are casters, then, in society that it's actually a resource, a monetary resource to people who don't need it for anything else? It's fascinating. I'm really intrigued by it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a lot.
I might not have gotten that deep into it, but that's where my brain goes.
It was super interesting. Like, I really want to go again with it. But
yeah.
Well, that'll have to be a discussion for another time, gentlemen, as we are out of sand. So,
our magic resource.
our magical resource of time has run out, so we must say adieu, dear viewer. We hope you have enjoyed. If you would like to support us, or sign off, if you'd like to support us at the end of Planar Crossroads, you can do that checking us out over at theiopc.com or endofplanarcrossroads.com. Both places have our social links as well as our links to where we upload. So there you go. Do check out the Gentle Voice TV if you want to see a ministry channel I'm working on. And I think that's it for me. So, Skrat, where can they find you?
YouTube. A Squirrel Plays. You can come over there and watch some videos or join the Discord, which is in all the video descriptions. And you can share your creations and or squirrel pictures.
Mm-hmm. I mean, considering it's themed completely around squirrels, it does get some of the choicest squirrel memes.
It does. Speaking of, there's your one for today. Somebody sent me, take any song with the word girl in it and change it to squirrel.
This squirrel's on fire!
That's a good one.
I did a short skirt and long jacket. I hated it.
Dude, that's so good. Actually, now I'm doing it in my head.
All right, Dan. How you gonna follow that up?
Not very well. Check us out at avenuestudios.media. Links to everything. YouTube, Rumble, Podcast, Patreon, and Locals if you want to support us and join all the fun things we're doing. Join the adventure we are on. And thank you, boys. This is fun.
Yep. And I think we just got our comment for this time. Just so y'all know, for those of you that skip the sign-offs, you won't get to see it. This squirrel's on fire. This squirrel's on fire. That is your thing there. And now I really do want to hear Skrat figure out somebody to do that parody.
Oh. Oh no.
Get Glee to sing it or something.
There you go.
I don't think she's gonna do it.
Yeah, so you tell her your internet friends want her to sing this song, and it's like, what? Why? What kind of internet friends do you have?
Weird ones.
All right. Well, as always, travelers, have a great day. God bless and enjoy. We'll see you next time, Lord willing. Bye.
Bye.
This content was made possible by travelers and viewers like you. Thank you.
I'm telling you, that would get hits.
It
This
would.
squirrel's on fire. Especially if you got someone to... All you'd have to do is like cheap After Effects or something and just follow it, rotoscope it around the squirrel and just follow the squirrel around. It doesn't have to be doing anything crazy. Just running on something or I don't know. And then it says, this squirrel's on fire. But if you really wanted to do it, you would have like some kind of squirrel playing a piano or something. Because Rihanna plays piano when she does it. I think it's in there somewhere. Anyway,
Somewhere.
I saw a music video one time. I know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
All right.
It's a solid guess. They're singing and I think playing an instrument in it.
Well, I remember a lot of things, and that was one of the things I remember.
Yeah,
So,
to be honest, I'm sure you're right.
all right. I'm going to check the recording on this one.